Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to introduce another plant for you. Now this is in my hanging basket. It's called a Mandevilla, and they do have several names like Dipladenia, but I just call it a Mandevilla. And the beautiful thing about these Mandevillas is that they flower from every single junction. Look at that. And I'm getting another blossom here. Now this is beautiful because summer is coming up, and once you do have these hanging around, you will get the blooms, just multiple blooms, which will make it so attractive. So welcome back to my channel. I'm Alice and I'm the Red Soul Gardener. So as we talk about the Mandevilla, or we call it the Dipladenia, is basically a lot of people do get, or let's say interchange the names. So if you do go into a greenhouse and you're asking for a Mandevilla and they're thinking, what is that? You could also say a Dipladenia. Now there are other names like the rocket trumpet, and the reason why I think they call it the rocket trumpet because the flower does look like a trumpet. Look at that. Another name for it is the Chilean yasmin, but it actually isn't a yasmin plant, but what a lovely name anyway. So when we're talking propagation, is that you could do propagation through stem cutting, or you can do propagation through layering. So when you do go into a garden center, when you do ask for the Mandevilla and they don't know it, you can always use the word the Dipladenia. But the difference between the both of them is that the Mandevilla does grow with a vine, whereas the Dipladenia is actually a little shrub-like. So you do find that if you do have a Dipladenia, it doesn't grow that, I mean, not a big shrub, but it stays really quite compact. Whereas with the Mandevilla, like this, is that you will get the vine. Now, when you do a propagation, is basically you can do a stem cutting, and that's what I prefer to do. But the other thing is that what you could do is actually do layering, where you take the vine and do stick it, all the nodes in soil and hold it down either with a Kirby grip, and you will get rooting from every node. Now the other method is to actually collect the seeds, but I've never done it, so I can't advise on that. With a Mandevilla or a Dipladenia, is that what I did is I went to my plant and I actually got my stems. So I have 3 stems here, and these are the ones we're going to propagate. Now one of them, if you notice, it does have a red flower, but we'll have to get rid of it for propagation purposes. So now what you do with the Mandevilla, this is a bit curved. So what I'll do with this one is just to straighten it out, I will just cut below this node and just get rid of that. Now, as I cut it, you must realize that as soon as you cut, is that you do get a milky substance, almost like a poinsettia type of milk structure or euphorbia, but it is toxic, although I don't really bother about it. But what you could do is just take it and run it in water, and then it'll sort of dissolve. But also, in other situations, you would wear gloves. So what I'm going to do is just remove these leaves, just like that, for propagation purposes. So the other thing I'm going to do is, because we don't want all the energy to go into the flower, as we know with propagation, so what I'm going to do is just snip off the flower, just like that. So this could be one of my propagations that I'm going to do. And so what I do is just repeat the process again. So I'm removing these leaves. And then the last thing I'm going to do is, again with this one, do this exactly the same procedure. Just remove all these leaves like that. So that is another stem, and I'm just going to run it here. So as we know is that we've kept some of these leaves for photosynthesis, but what I could do actually is remove this bottom one so we don't have too much energy going in there. So here we go. So all you need to do is get your container. Now, as I said, this one here, I have put a bit more compost in it, and I did put some river sand. So it is quite, sort of quite draining. And so this is where I am actually going to take this and put some water in it. Just like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here and just go below the node, like that. And I'm just going to nip it there. And then stick it, submerge it in the soil. And again, do exactly the same here, which again, I can see the node. Here's the node. And once again, submerge that. And again, with this one, just want to straighten it out a bit. So I'm going to just cut there. And again, just below the node, and then submerge it. So that is a simple stem propagation. And I was just thinking of this little one here, and I might even just take it and put it in the corner and see if it'll root, just like that. So that is a stem propagation. Now, the thing is that what you have to note is that the vine, as I pull this one here, this is the vine. And again, from every single node that you get on the vine, you will get leaves forming, and when you do layering, you will get rooting. So I can see a little leaf coming out here. And what I did with this plant, I was just playing around with it. And so I did notice that one of the vines had actually gone down onto the soil. And then I opened it, and here you go. This is what kind of rooting you will get when you're doing layering. So I did stick it in the soil, and I've already got a rooting there. So with a propagation, so we said we could do a stem propagation, and you can do layering of actually taking this and sticking it into the soil, holding it down maybe with a Kirby grip, so that the node just gets immersed in the soil and you will get rooting. Then later what you do is just cut those sections out, and that's where your plant will start growing. Now, I did have one plant that did survive my propagation, so I'm bringing it out. It's actually been in my greenhouse for a while, and what I noticed is they have started budding. And this is actually quite fast, because I've had this one. I started propagating it about 2 months ago, and I had a lot of failures with the other cuttings. And then this one managed to survive. So I've been waiting to do this episode. But then the other day I went to have a look at it, and I saw, my gosh, look at that. I think I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 flowers, and these buds actually come from one stem. So from one stem I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's how this beautiful plant does flower. And you could imagine the abundance once it does take off of all these flowers, whether it's in pink or in a red or in white. That's all comes from one stem, and all the buds are there. So what I'd like to do with this plant is actually move it into a bigger pot like this. It's just full of bark and all this organic stuff, and I think I need to put my gloves at this stage. The thing about my soil is all this organic stuff, and we put a bit of river sand in there just to make it a bit more porous. And we have to always remember that the Mandevilla and the Dipladenia stroke Dipladenia are tropical and subtropical plants. So it's good to give always these plants what they really are used to. So I'm going to just put that soil here, and we're going to tip this over and look at that rooting that I've been dreading. So I'm going to just tip it here. Now, this is about 2 months, 2.5 months. And I'm just going to lift it. And this is my rooting here from the cutting. And what I did notice with this Mandevilla plant is that it does start flowering quite quickly, whereas most propagations is that you don't get the flowers straight away, but this actually seems to want to flower quite quickly, and that's why we have those flowers. So this is the rooting, 2.5 months. So what I'm going to do with this one is I'm actually just going to dig it here and put it in the corner, like that. So that's the first one, round 1. And so that is that propagation. So the other thing I did is I got my Mandevilla, and then I thought to myself it was part of a bigger plant. And then I thought, why don't I just divide it and see if I can propagate it and see if it works. So this is a plant, again, it's got its flower. So I'm going to tip it over and then we'll look at it. So you see what I did is, let me just show you, is I actually went further down and picked up the stem, divided my Mandevilla into the original and 2 pieces, and here you go. Again, and then I just put the stem in soil, and I've got rooting happening. Do you see? Yeah, here's the rooting. And I'm going to also put it in this pot so I can have a really thick foliage on that pot. So again, I'm going to just stake it, and I'm going to just stick it in here, just like that. So already my little pot's getting quite busy here. And I have a strange feeling this could be a red one. So we will have maybe 2 colors here. Again, this is the other bit that I cut off. It appears to have had more rooting. And just hold on. So let's wash it off. Have a look. Oh yeah, this is a good one. So there is rooting. It seemed to have done better than the other plant. So again, with this one, I'm just going to make a hole here, and I will just keep it in here. This is getting quite messy. Okay, so that is my Mandevilla. I have 3 babies in there, and with a flower, and also this is soon to flower, and 2 of them are just a division, taking the plant and dividing it into half and propagating it. So I think it's doing quite well, and I've got a flower. And the other one was just a straightforward stem propagation. Now, let's look at the Mandevilla. So once you've done this, what sort of soil does it want? We've talked about having it organic, but a really good, well-draining soil. Now, the thing about the Mandevilla stroke Dipladenia is basically initially after you've done the propagation, you do keep the soil moist but not soggy, because it needs that time to start producing its little branches and settling down. After that, this plant is actually drought tolerant. So I would do my finger test and let it dry between, first of all, let it dry between the watering. Once you've done the finger test, and if it is moist, don't water, because it doesn't want water around its root. So once it is dry, you water. And like the other thing I did say is that, okay, I did put organic mixture, but I did put a bit of sandy river sand in there just to make it really well porous, and also not to keep that moisture in its pot or hanging basket. So we've talked about the water, we've talked about the soil. Now the thing about Dipladenias or Mandevilles is that basically these plants are sun loving, is that they don't mind getting full sun, at least 6 to 8 hours. However, if you do have it too much in a bright light and you see that the leaves starting to turn yellow or it's actually getting scorched, you can put it in a situation that does have partial light. But basically, in order to get your blooms, you need full light. Now, the thing is that as I was doing this, is that I started thinking is that it's important to say is that you can do pinching. So what I would do is I would look for a plant, let's go here, and actually nip the top. Just nip it. So with pinching now, if this looks quite scraggy, is that you will have side shooting and then your plant will look more fuller. So basically during your summer is that you will get blooms and blooms and blooms up to the first frost. But the thing about this plant is that it's not frost tolerant. So if you do have it in a hanging basket and you do get that chill, do bring it up and start your overwinter storage in your basement, keeping it warm, less water. We know what to do. In the cooler climate, you cannot, especially in climates where you do get a freeze, by leaving it outside, you're actually going to damage your plants. So do bring them in. However, in warmer climates where you do consider it as a perennial in terms that it doesn't die off and you can every year get your blossoms, is that you can move it slightly. I would have it in pots, but just try to follow the light so that it does get sufficient light, because remember, it is sun loving and it does need that light. So I am actually quite happy. I've got my cuttings here and I do hope they will be a success. And if they will be a success, again, I will just actually put it in, all of it together in a container, bigger container, and have that abundant, and maybe even mix, if the colors are different, I will actually have one with many colors. So I'm actually very excited. So don't forget to like and share and subscribe and press that notification button. And don't forget, we are on Instagram. Do DM me, and I always do answer. We post so many beautiful plants or my experiences in it. So do follow us. Do go and buy yourself one of these plants, because basically the summer is coming and I'm so sure all of you are so excited. And this is a great summer plant. It is low maintenance, gives you blooms right through, and basically it is a beautiful plant. So thank you so much and happy gardening.